This episode of the Free Lunch Podcast is brought to you by the Selma Project, an initiative created to infuse hope and inspiration into the youth of Selma, Alabama through culture, art, and entertainment. It is a call on natives and friends of the Selma movement to use their gifts, talents, and resources to pave a road of success for future generations. And brought to you by faithful listeners everywhere. And now to the show. One time, two time, three. And see me shine, put some light on their mind, illuminate the dark, give them sight if they blind. And see me shine for the ones that they said will never make it. Finally got my shine.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast, home of the New South Movement. This your boy Titan. I got B Jeezy with me. B Jeezy, what's happening?
You whack podcasters. You whack podcasters. What's happening there, your boy BG Free Lunch Podcast? Here we go again.
Talk your stuff, BG.
Talk your stuff. You whack podcasters. I hate you.
This is why we don't listen to y'all.
This is why we do what we do every Thursday. You whack podcasters.
Classic. That was classic.
Dog, what's going on with you?
Man, what is all that movement going on your side of the world, man?
Oh man,
I got so much going on right now.
I'm drinking water. I'm in my wooden rocking chair. I'm kicked back.
Man, I can hear the rocking chair moving or something.
Yeah, do you hear that chair? That's that old wood.
Yeah.
That's that antique.
Hey,
what's up?
Go any further. Can you please talk about this new project that we got going on and make certain the people are aware of this GoFundMe program that we kind of launched?
Oh, yeah, man. That's that Selma project you're talking about. Just a culmination of ideas that we've had as it relates to us using our resources to give back. So we launched the Selma project. And what we're going to focus on is our community. We're going to be calling on the members of the Free Lunch Podcast family to give their resources to ensure that kids in this Selma area and surrounding areas have an opportunity to be inspired. And we're going to use culture. We're going to use the arts. We're going to use entertainment to get people excited, to get our peers excited, but more importantly than that, to get people in the mind frame of giving back. So many times, we reach certain heights and we obtain certain things and we sit on it when we should actually be sharing it and using our lives and our experiences to inspire. So this Selma project is just an entity to allow us to focus our attention on the things that really matter. And for us, if you pay attention to our podcast and listen to our opinions, you see that community building is of utmost importance to us. And so we have just finally decided to come up with something, a mission that we can stand behind and also allow other people to participate and feel good about giving back. And so we'll have a lot of different things coming out. And we'll be soliciting support. So we just hope that with stuff like this that we raise the bar and raise the level of expectation for the youth that will be able to partake in some of these things that we'll be bringing to the community.
I think it's an opportunity for us to continue this whole concept around empowering ourselves that you touched on. So I think that projects like the Selma project, and if you haven't gone to the GoFundMe site, anything that's higher than a $20 donation gets you a shirt. So it's a Selma project shirt that looks really, really nice, and it has a lot of nice graphics on it. So what we're trying to do and what we learned, really, if you want to use President Obama's first election which was really centered around a grassroots movement, and that's essentially what we have to do as a community. Is really develop small grassroots, authentic, with integrity, with honesty, and I say those words, pronunciating them, because I was talking to one of my former coaches that I used to coach with the other day. Just so many of these different organization presidents and these people take advantage of the system and find ways to manipulate people and get paid off of your child playing sports. And it's just time to be. It's enough with that, and it's just time to do something that's authentic, genuine, that has integrity. And this is one of those projects. The funds from GoFundMe strictly go to the production around this particular event. I don't get any funds. BG doesn't get anything from it. And essentially, hopefully, what this does is it empowers those that attend, but it inspires the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that's what we're doing. And we'll try to continue to do these kind of things. We got some other interviews that we want to put out for you guys, including one of my mentees, so he can kind of talk about some of the inspiration that I may have provided him. I think I did, but hopefully, again, that can really be centered around this idea of empowerment and inspiring. And I'm just excited.
It's time for it, man. We oftentimes we fall back and we wait on somebody else to do things for us, or we sit back and we complain about how there's nothing for the youth to do and there's nothing positive going on. So now here's a time and an opportunity to do something, and like you say, empower ourselves and empower our community. So let's use our resources and use our talents to help somebody else.
Exactly. And you said one thing else that I wanted to kind of reiterate. One of the most popular slogans is that of Nike. And it simply says, just do it. And the thing I like about that, BG, is that it's a verb. And what I've told people since we've started the podcast, and just young people that I talk to in general, is don't be a noun, be a verb. If you want to sing, sing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to dance, dance. And what I'm referring to is becoming that verb. So hopefully that's something that we're doing, and hopefully we are living out what we talk about and what we preach about, which is actually a good transition in today's topic.
Yes, sir.
So those of you that are interested in sponsoring us for that particular event, the Selma Project, go to the GoFundMe site and search just for the Selma Project. For those that are interested in sponsoring the podcast, and that's just really the operational behind the podcast, the fees that go with the tools that we're using, but also just the travel. So as we continue to travel to different sites to interview different folks, if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of the podcast, we definitely can promote your business, whatever your vision is, or if you just want to be a silent donor, that's great too, because we all know that the greatest form of giving is anonymous to anonymous.
That's right. That's right.
So with that being said, I think it's a good transition, BG, into today's topic. And what I'll do is just give some background into how we came into the topic, and then allow you to kind of just speak on what you saw and give some initial thoughts as we continue through the actual dialogue of today's podcast. But shout out to the listeners. We do have listeners that listen and offer opinions and offer different topics for different podcasts. And for today's podcast, that's exactly what happened. One of our dedicated listeners who I'm grateful for, she listened. She has provided numerous ideas or suggestions around various topics. And for this particular topic, we decided that it would be a good idea to kind of talk about the topic, but then to invite her to be on the show. So essentially, the email that she sent was, I renounced Delta 2 years ago. Here is why. In the email is a link to a YouTube, and it basically says, check it out, let me know what you think. So in the YouTube, we clicked on the link, and it is a link to Senior Pastor Eric W. Davis, who is preaching at Word of God Church and Ministries in Columbia, South Carolina. And the topic of his particular conversation, which was about an hour and 31 minutes and 27 seconds long, basically said the idolatry behind secret societies. So for today's conversation, we want to talk about this idea that was shared to us where a young lady actually renounced Delta. The plan is to have her on the show. But in doing so, we kind of want to give our first initial thoughts and comments, because both BG and I are members of fraternities, and I think that it'd be good to kind of have some background into this particular conversation prior to her arrival.
Yeah, y'all gonna love this one. And so yeah, we got an opportunity to check out that link of the pastor talking to his I guess study group about secret societies and how secret societies in their founding and in their missions are counter to what the Bible says that, you know, we should be doing as Christians. So naturally, of course, I went into, you know, viewing the video from a biased perspective, because like Ty say, we're members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So for me, knowing how I felt and my reasoning for going into the fraternity, and knowing that I went into the fraternity as a Christian, as a believer, I never would have put myself in a position of aligning with an organization that would put me in opposition to what my core beliefs are. But it brought about an interesting thing. And then since that, bro, going and actually looking at that YouTube video, there are a few videos that focus on this very topic of people that have been a part of the NPHC organizations, the different ones, and have renounced their membership for various reasons. So it's interesting to even think about that, and to know that most of these organizations, from what I know about them, I know about mine for sure, are founded on Christian principles. So it really raises the question of where this particular pastor, what his motives were. Was it something that had happened that triggered him to go and make this, to develop this, I guess, debate between whether you should be a Christian and be in these organizations or not? It raised a lot of different questions. So my initial thing was, of course, he didn't know what he was talking about, and he didn't have decent enough grounds to really speak on what he was speaking about. But, you know, to each his own. So for me, I just really wasn't buying into it. And as we talk about it, we'll bring out some of the other concerns and problems that I had with that particular presentation.
Let's take a step back. And the reason why I say let's take a step back is because I respect the listener, and I respect the person that actually sent the actual email stating that she renounced Delta. And then I think of the show 5150 that you put me on to, in which Corey Holcomb and those folks basically said that gangs and cliques, that fraternities and cliques are basically gangs.
Gangs.
Yeah. Did you see that? Did you see that, you too? I didn't.
Yeah. I saw that one.
So the reason I bring that up is because I want to give a perspective. I want to give that perspective, right? That perspective being that fraternities and sororities are seen as gangs. For this particular person that sent us the email, who I respect, her saying that she renounced Delta, so I think it is fair that we give her an opportunity to speak on it. But even from those perspectives, what about that idea that fraternities and sororities are gangs?
Yeah, there have been instances of where the organizations have performed in that manner. There have been people that have died at the hands of their fraternal or sororities organizations. There have been people that have been arrested. There have been some bad incidences that have been connected to the organizations that we're talking about. So, granted, members of the NPHC have done things that would make one look at them as gangs, would make them look at the organizations as demonic societies, demonic secret societies. So I don't take anything away from that. And in a lot of cases, based off of, because each organization has its particulars within it. Each chapter can function differently. So, globally, you can have the motto that you live by and your cardinal values and things like that on a national scale, but then you have these small representations in your chapters throughout the country, throughout the world, that may have taken on their own translation of what those principles mean, and they might be operating totally against what the thing was founded upon. So yeah, you do have to consider the bad part, I guess, along with the good as well. But on the flip side, and I speak to my own personal experience, is that, everything that I've gotten personally from it has been positive reinforcement of my core values. And so I stand on that side of the argument.
The other perspective also is this pastor used scripture to support his perspective or his side as to this whole idea behind members of these fraternities, sororities. I mean, he even mentioned Masons and Eastern Star, which was the basis of his conversation. The members kind of idolized the founders and those people. So what are your thoughts on that? And really, before you even answer that, I think it'll be appropriate for those that haven't seen the YouTube for us to kind of give a description of what we saw. And basically, for those that are interested in watching it, if you search for Senior Pastor Eric W. Davis, the idolatry behind secret societies, you'll find it on YouTube. But essentially, he kind of started off talking about Masons and their whole process, and really this idea of how you become a third-degree Mason. And they have, apparently there must be this group called Ex-Members of Masons for Christ that kind of reveal the secrets of Masonry. I'm not a Mason, so I can't speak on the authenticity of his PowerPoint and what his claims. But then he talks about the Eastern Star and then basically the similar thing, and then he goes into fraternities and sororities, where he picks, and I'm laughing because his story behind Omegas was 100% comical for the bros, but he picks different parts of the fraternities and sororities where he breaks down how they are satanic almost to a certain degree, and how they are worshiping how their idolatry and etc.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the breakdown for those that haven't seen it, but kind of going back to the original thought. What are your thoughts on that whole idea about idolatry and members of different fraternities idolizing and worshiping the founders?
Well, and I think that by making that statement, it really points to him focusing that particular talk around what he's observed or heard other people say. So a lot of the mentions that he was making and the connections that he were making were basically just an observation of the crest and the shields, and him giving his own interpretation of what the particular symbols and things meant. And of course, as we say, they're Greek letter society. So within that, you're going to have the Greek lettering, you're going to have the Greek symbolism, you're going to have images of the Greek gods and things that are on the regalia of these particular organizations. And so the connection that he was drawing was because you have these type of symbols a part of your but basically a part of your organization, then it means that you feel the same way about those particular symbols and those Greek gods and all that type of stuff as the persons that really believe and put their faith on those things. He didn't take into account that just in general society, there are Greek symbols that mean different things. There are Greek symbols that stand for intellect, Greek symbols that stand for wisdom, Greek symbols that stand for, prosperity, spirit, and strength that are founded in these symbols and logos and the regalia. And I think that that's the part that he overlooked in trying to make his point, is that taking that surface level stuff and just taking it directly to people that are a part of these organizations, pray to those gods, and put all of this stuff before their belief as Christians when when it's really not to that degree. And I feel like that's what failed that whole argument, is that there really wasn't no substance. It was just this overview look and making it into and manipulating the information into a format that fit his argument, which is what we tend to do when we're trying to prove a point.
And that's the reason why I really didn't comment on or share my initial thoughts, because you kind of summarized it for me in a nutshell. I am interested in hearing what our listener has to say, because to me, I think it'll be interesting and entertaining. But I do think that this idea of what 5150 was saying in regards to this whole gang mentality is interesting, because I think that you can make a correlation today that different fraternities and sororities operate like gangs. I think that's a debatable conversation to have. You and I did a podcast where we talked about the origin and the history of fraternities and sororities that we actually leaked back in November, December time frame, and a lot of that was centered around founders they had just occurred for Omega, and we kind of yearly you kind of rededicate yourself where you go through the oath again, and for those that actually read the oath and understand, in particular to Omega, then you understand what it's about, which is the total opposite of what this particular preacher was preaching about. But I do think that if you understand the history around the founders, particularly for Omega and and understand just the history of what was happening back during that time in 1908 and 1911, etc., you understand that that was a time where a lot of young African Americans were empowering themselves and looking for ways to advance a particular movement. Like-minded people getting together. And the greatest example of that is actually here in D.C., where a number of the fraternities were founded, fraternities and sororities was founded. But really, if you just do a tour called the Before There Was Harlem, There Was U Street tour, you'll understand the significance of what was happening during that time. So point being is that if you understand the historical perspective of when fraternities and sororities were founded, and then you understand what those founders' purpose and origin were, you'll totally understand that what this preacher is preaching about has nothing to do with nothing. Really, for me, the bigger story is more or less around what's being taught by those in influential positions and those of leadership. And I think for folks that listen to this podcast may think that I'm anti-pastor, but I'm more of accountability. And for me, particularly around what he was speaking on in regards to Omega Psi Phi, had no merit, and it makes me question his credibility on the topic.
We really couldn't argue the other ones for sure because, we don't know the meanings behind the symbols and the mottos and stuff of other organizations. But when he did get to Omega, he actually kind of just ran through it. But the representation that he used to come up with his hypothesis ended up being an Egyptian dog. He didn't even pull up a bulldog. He said that what was the name of the dog he called? You remember?
Ambush or something.
And said that our fraternity was founded on the Egyptian dog. We it's more to us than just being dogs. So that was just a stereotypical assessment of just what he's seen, when we're out, when we're barking or doing it, whatever we do. He took that and drew it to represent our whole meaning as an organization, which is so misleading. And to go to your thing, just with these people that are in the leadership positions, especially in the pulpit and at the heads of these churches, I feel like they need to be more mindful of the messaging that they're giving. Like, you just take some surface level information and you're affecting people's lives and their thought processes without giving them the whole thing. And then to that, it speaks to you as a member of the church or whatnot, and being or holding them accountable for the messages that they're delivering. Because if you just do stuff like that, you could have people doing any and everything just to fit your agenda, which is a dangerous thing, in my opinion.
Well, see, I can go for days on this topic because I'm very passionate about what you say and how you affect other people. When you agree to step into a pulpit, then at that point you are affecting people's lives. And for me, and I might get a little passionate here because it really disturbs me when you have people that are in vulnerable situations, because essentially, if you really think about it, people that go to church, people that are 100% involved in church and that kind of thing, those people are vulnerable people. They're looking for something. They're looking for some type of answer.
Right.
And they come hoping that the person that's quote unquote feeding them has done their homework and is offering up a message that's quote unquote from the Lord. And in this case, I kind of question his credibility simply because of what we just talked about. And that being his whole message around Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated was flawed. 100% flawed. And to your point, he glazed over it, but he mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
And because he mentioned it, anything else that came out of his mouth, I questioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't speak on the other fraternities, sororities, the Masons, or the Eastern Stars, but I can question him getting into the pulpit and call himself providing a message that was thus saith the Lord. And I know you got some comments, but the other thing I wanted to add was his presentation. You know, for those that even watched the YouTube, I kind of got turned off because I don't know if he was trying to be authentic or if he was trying to be just be casual and be appealing to those in attendance. But he answers his cell phone before he gets started. I don't remember if it was before or after the prayer, but he answers his cell phone and holds a 30-second conversation with his wife. Now, why are you answering the cell phone and holding a 30-second conversation with your wife, and you about to speak amongst the people and say what and thus saith the Lord?
He knew he better answer that phone. It was gonna be a problem.
Well, he don't need to be preaching on Tuesday or Wednesday night at Bible study.
Well, she need to know that.
Or she need to know that, because why are you calling and you know he at Bible study, or do you not know?
And why she ain't there?
And why she not there? So it's so many questions. Point being, questions that you can kind of ask even around the presentation of the sermon. So to have the audacity to answer your phone when you are about to tell the people what thus said the Lord is a total, in my opinion, discredit to the Lord, but at the same time, it's a discredit to the people that come to hear what thus said the Lord has to say.
You said something special. You said that he mentioned it. And, you know, by mentioning it, he didn't go into a lot of detail, but he did say something. And for somebody that might be considering, that might not be a part of the organization, that might have been thinking about it, by him mentioning it in this particular light, could have possibly turned them off completely from something that they could have benefited from, or that could have actually supplemented their faith and their belief. So that mentioning, even though it's small in our mind, is very powerful when you mention something to a very vulnerable audience. But there's power in that. And I just come back to that.
Well, let's think about it. I just thought about something. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
So vulnerability. Vulnerability is the idea of you basically surrendering yourself and being 100% open and saying, okay, whatever you have it is to tell me, you can tell me, or you can do. You know, you're just 100% open and pure, basically. You're pure. Now think about, in all due respect, think of a physical example where you have someone that becomes someone that's not as powerful as you because they're vulnerable, because they're weaker. And essentially vulnerability correlates to weakness. And essentially you have the power and the influence over that person. And that's essentially what pastors have on a daily basis, or on a weekly basis. Is the power and the influence over someone that becomes weaker spiritually because of that vulnerability. So they have the responsibility as the pastor or as the person in control to respect that vulnerability and do the best that they can to offer truth. And I think that in this case, or in my opinion, I think that could be seen as an example of a pastor taking advantage of a group of people that are vulnerable.
Totally.
I think when you get into those positions, and we had a conversation, and I don't want to have it on the air because it speaks to gender, and I don't want to speak to gender. But I think that the question needs to be raised at vulnerability and this idea of gullible. And I think that the question really needs to be asked around vulnerability and gullible to get a sense of why is it easier for people to be gullible or vulnerable.
Another problem that I have with that whole, power vulnerability complex, that if something is wrong, if we're in an organization and it is totally out of line with what we should be doing in our faith and as believers, I have no problem with someone enlightening me and showing me that I'm in the wrong place and I need to be somewhere else. But in delivering that or in signaling that to me, you need to have the information and the support to back it. Don't just come telling me that I'm doing something wrong just because you saw something somewhere or you felt a certain kind of way about it. Give me truth. And oftentimes, as we see it in the political realm, we see it in education, we see it even with our leaders as we talk about, movement and revolution and all that type of stuff. Like, we're getting all this instruction, but it's unfounded instruction. It's just coming out of the sky, and people are relating it to the people as gospel. And if you're not careful, if you haven't prepared yourself or you haven't, gained a certain knowledge base or wisdom about these things, you could very easily fall for it. And when we think about this religious thing, I always think about Jim Jones in Jonestown and how that man took people from the United States, got them off into an island and had them people drinking that poison, thinking that somebody was going to come and get them. I think about that every time. And that's what's happening in a lot of different sections and in different areas, is that brainwashing, if you want to say, brainwashing and taking advantages of people's weaknesses. So we got to be careful, man. As just regular old Joes, we've got to be careful about who we follow and the information and stuff that we're taking in and making life changing decisions off of.
It does, and that's the reason why I'm grateful for peace of mind and health. And maybe I have a gift of discernment, or maybe I have a gift of, or maybe it's environment supersedes DNA. But I really believe that there's a gift and a curse when it comes to this idea of discernment and this idea of being able to question those in positions that tend to that have influential positions. And I think that the responsibility, and we even had a conversation also where we talked about relationships, and we talked about men and women building each other up. And I think there's a responsibility of us as individuals, but also there's a responsibility of us as a community to build each other up, but also hold those in positions to be accountable. And it's interesting because, the direction of this particular podcast, as we get close to a closing, we talk about this idea of renouncing a sorority, but yet we change the focus of the podcast and the attention of the podcast to accountability of our leadership. And I think that that's a prime example of the issues that we're facing today in urban community, and it's twofold. One of a mixed message, or the lack of clarity, and the other being of a need to hold those in higher positions accountable for the message and the journey that they're trying to take their sheep on.
And let's make no mistake about it. We started off talking about, fraternities and how fraternities can be seen actually as a detriment to the community. We as organizations have to do a better job of reflecting those core values that our founders set out for us when they started our organizations, because we both have seen it, that there are some things that the bros do that a lot of times ain't even in line with what the principles are, or what's in that book. So we do have to take ownership of how we represent and the image that we portray and how we live our lives, because really we should be living our lives in a way that we reflect a certain degree of righteousness and goodness to make people want to become a part of the organization because of that, which is the same thing that we do as believers in terms of how we live our lives as a reflection of what's going on good inside of us and how we're able to sustain ourselves day in and day out as a way of encouraging other people to tap into what we're connected to. So yeah, we've got to hold the leaders accountable in all areas of life, and then we also have to hold ourselves accountable to living to a certain type of standard so that our righteousness and the way that we live our lives cannot be questioned or denied by anyone. But think about this, man. When we talk about accountability, let's just say accountability in the church. If the pastor is in a position of leading or teaching us something that we don't know, say, for example, in an 11 o'clock service, why is it not a part of the custom for us to be able to raise our hands as if we were in a classroom and ask the pastor a question when he's saying something that we don't understand?
That's for Bible study.
Why is there a difference between what you can do in Bible study and what you can do at a quote unquote 11 o'clock service? Because that means that he could be giving you anything at 11 o'clock service and nobody can question it.
Well, it's thus said the Lord. That's thus. Thus said.
So even to that degree, we've been conditioned to, even if we don't understand at that moment, you just got to go with it. I just thought about that.
I understand. So, I'm interested to hear what our listener has to say. I didn't say her name because if we have her on the show, we can introduce her. But I'm interested to get in her perspective. Again, I respect her perspective, and I'm sure she has a well thought out viewpoint on the topic because it was sent to us. So because it was sent to us and because she probably has a viewpoint, I'm interested in hearing it. But again, my whole thought in conversation and his credibility, Senior Pastor Eric Davis, was lost when he spoke on Omega Psi Phi. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt going into the YouTube conversation, but he was totally off and totally 100% incorrect when he spoke on Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And because of that, his credibility on the organizations had no value. So I am interested in hearing the conversation that we had with her, and we'll just go from there. So that's really all I have.
Yeah, it's going to be really big, and she's going to really bring it home for us and heighten our level of understanding and what it means to her, what it meant to her, I guess maybe growing up, probably having dreams of being a part of the organization, then becoming a part of an organization, and then having this life-changing move to move away from the organization. So I'm really excited to hear it. It'll be a different type of conversation, but like I say, it seems like it's something that is on the rise, and we'll be able to find out like if there are some common themes that are going on that are making people not want to be a part of the fraternities and sororities anymore. So you all be looking out for that. If you got anything that you want us to ask on that particular episode, or if there are any other topics that you want us to cover, feel free, drop us a line on Twitter, FreelunchPodC, or you can hit us up on Instagram, FreeLunch Podcast, and check us out on freelunchpodcast.com for more podcasts and blogs.
Sounds good. For those of you that are listening, go check out the Selma Project. It's a way for you to assist us, empowering the youth. But overall, hopefully this inspires you. The podcast being organic and from the grassroots, something that BG and I are both passionate about. Hopefully that inspires you. Hopefully the Selma Project inspires you, because at the end of the day, we need more foot soldiers. We need more authentic people living out their passion and their truth. Because as you live out your passion and your truth, you become an example and you make the world a much better place. If you're interested in sponsoring just the podcast in general, everything that we do today is 100% funded by BG and I. We could use your support. So if you're interested in funding and supporting us on a weekly, monthly basis, do that. Whether you sponsor us or not, we're going to continue to record, but it does lighten the burden on both of us. But also it allows us to travel and give you a better product. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to BG and myself or the Free Lunch Podcast group to do that. Other than that, that's all I have. I think this is a very interesting podcast, and I think it's one that we look forward to having our listener on to provide her side or her perspective on the overall topic. So, and if you'd like for us to come to one of your events, let us know. We're looking to, again, continue to push the envelope for what we're doing. If you want us at a church event, or if you want us to drive a conversation at a party or some type of entertaining event, we're there. Just reach out to us and let us know. I think having these type of conversations has helped us. So we are Free Lunch Podcast, and we are home to the New South movement. You whack podcasters.
Yes, sir.
Kids and hold it down. I show will as I proceed to give you what you need, and for you hating bitches, praise up all these EQT. Let me remind you, make it clear for the third time. We are not the same. I'm on my own cloud. Thinking you can get with this, use your other mind. Come celebrate a king party with a second line. It ain't so trivial, a foreign like Bolivia. We bust shots for hip hop. Can you feel it, bruh? Chant down Babylon, walking in the Exodus, executing vernacular to penetrate the pessimist. Ain't too many that can step as real. Yeah, giving people something they can feel. Penthouse when the ball drop. Came too far, now we won't stop. See me shine, put some light on their mind. Illuminate the dark, give them sight if they blind. See me shine for the ones that they said will never make it. Finally got my shot and I'm gonna take it. See me shine, put some light on their mind. Illuminate the dark, give them sight if they blind. And see me shine for the ones that they said will never make it. Finally got my shot and I'm gonna take it.